and today I wanted to record a video just about perfectionism because I got a question in the DMs and I realized that if I responded to him, it would be quite lengthy just because I have an issue with perfectionism myself, but I also feel like it would benefit a lot of traders just to understand kind of um, maybe my perspective or just if I have a little bit of wisdom to share. So I feel like this would be a worthy topic for a video. So the question is, hey, Brian, I want to ask you for some tips. How does one be okay with not being perfect? It's so damn hard. Like growing up and playing sports, I was always taught to always strive for perfection and was always punished for making mistakes. And it shows in my trading. I'm just so damn hard on myself when I make mistakes, and I thought maybe you could relate from your pro gaming experiences. So I thought to ask you if you had any tips on how to deal with this. Okay, so perfectionism in my mind is not always a bad thing, but my perspective has definitely changed over the course of these years. And at the beginning, I used to believe that perfectionism was all there was. Now, the thing about it is that, long story short, in the beginning, I think perfectionism is actually going to work for you in your favor. But in the future, as you develop more and more and more, and trading does not become like the one thing that you absolutely need to excel at 100% and just push yourself, but more like a means for generating income and supplementing your lifestyle and just reducing that stress. I think that's ultimately where people tend to gravitate towards in their later years, just because trading, in essence, is just a means to an end. And for a lot of new traders, I think it's they're driven to perfectionism just because like it has to be that way for them to succeed. Um, Not saying it's always the case, but generally it's something that people will have to eventually come to terms with later on. Um, but my initial reaction to this is I think about systems, and I bring that up a lot. But basically, how do you define perfect, or how do you define a high grade of execution or adhering to your strategy, whatever it is? The only way is to almost pull your own subjective criteria about what you expect from the market, given your strategy, the time frame, how much, let's say, meat is on the bone. Um, just for example, someone trading part time or someone who has maybe kids or some other sort of responsibility outside of trading may only may only have a certain amount of hours per day to dedicate to it. So their time frame and their perfect scenario might be way different than somebody like myself who doesn't have as many responsibilities yet, and so I can kind of be here majority of the day. So that's one way to start, narrowing it down. Don't forget as well, even if you have this one perfect time frame, someone else is probably has a higher time frame than you. It could be days, weeks, months. So you have to narrow down that perfectionism or that A grade to something in your control, something that's realistic for you, and something that makes sense. Now, at the beginning, when you're trading a much smaller size, for example, through the day when the volume starts to decrease and liquidity is not as good, larger accounts can't necessarily uh, overstate their welcome, as you can see. Like a lot of stocks, sometimes people are covering and the stocks are reclaiming towards the end of the day. Now, that's because there's not enough liquidity, and when they're covering, it is causing the stock price to rise. And then other people start getting nervous, hard stops, etc. But that's besides the point. The point is that at the beginning, you have almost infinite opportunity because you can be here at any stage of the game. I mean, whether or not it's not trading too much liquidity, that doesn't matter to your strategy. So your perfectionism can actually be, the range can be extended. And so again, define that. What does that mean to you? Now, the second thing is your actual systems quality. And this is where majority of your time should be spent, in my opinion. Not so much nagging yourself throughout the day because, of course, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to get nervous, not adhere to your plan. Things will happen that will catch you off guard, and that will, fluster you. And so, if you beat yourself over those situations, then you're actually working against yourself because these are human qualities that not majority of people are going to experience, no matter how experienced you are as a trader. Um, it's definitely just part of the game. So what I'm alluding to is if we can systematize in part or all of our strategy, however, you know, playing to your strengths, of course, but if you can start systematizing aspects of your strategy, position sizing, entry, exit, you know, um, and exit, of course, is stop loss and exit criteria, then now when you go ahead and review, it's not like, oh, you asshole, you messed this up because you got out too late. It's more like, my system told me that I needed to wait until this point in time. Maybe I need to give it, 5 more minutes. I didn't get an exit signal. I didn't get an entry signal. I cut before my stop loss. There was no reason for me to get out, etc. And now you can judge it against something that you've created, something that's more objective. This is my ultimate advice on this topic. And if you need an idea of how to systematize things, you can go ahead and rewatch my Chat with Traders interview where I speak on this and just the basics of it. But work towards systematizing aspects of your trading. And these are things that you can be working on, tweaking, optimizing day to day, but also you can go back and just backtest certain ideas on your charts that you've presumably screenshotted, or you can go back on your software, whatever it is. Thinkorswim is really great for this on demand. Um, and that way, now when you go into the market, it's not about like, oh, you bastard, you didn't follow your plan. It's more like, this is what needs to happen. At the end of the day, let's go ahead and screenshot all the charts of the entries executions, and let's see what unfolded. And then how did I compare to what my ideal was? Your ideal could be anything. If you're a shorter term like scalper and your time horizon is like a couple minutes, then did you live up to the potential of those couple minutes? Is it an all day fade situation? Is it a stock that's trending all day on the long side? Whatever it is. And so when you're able to, you know, define these aspects of trading, that will actually help a lot. And in that respect, now being a perfectionist is beneficial to you because you're working in your favor versus against you in a very like subjective manner. And this is basically the way I approach almost any sort of task, and as well in pro gaming. And I mentioned it before, but basically, when a pro gamer goes into a game, uh, even though his teammates, like let's say I'm playing a public game, so I have like random teammates, I'm going into the game with a idea of the strategy or the movements I want to make, the item builds I want to go, etc. I'm always quite calculated about what I'm aiming to achieve on an individual level. So even if I've lost the game, even if my teammates underperform, it's really irrelevant to me because I've basically fulfilled what I have defined beforehand as like what should be my optimal kind of outcome, and then I can kind of gauge like where the averages are and stuff like that. And yeah, that's really just it. So it should not be about beating yourself up. It shouldn't be this negative thing where you're constantly in your own head and just feeling so down. It's got to be more of like, I exited here. There was no reason. Let me see if I can improve that. And just kind of to go back to what I said before, not in this video, but like about these systems, it can be very simple. An exit criteria can be like every time I exit my trade, like statistically, or just in my mind, I've noticed this trend. Why don't I just wait another 2 more minutes? Why don't I just track my MAE and MFE? You should Google that. Um, Basically, when I exit a trade, how much more meat is there on the bone on average? And you can literally just hold on for that extra time. It doesn't even have to be a signal or anything. It could just be the fact that you know that you can improve in some way time, price, um, not getting shaken out of trades. And yeah, that should really help you and most traders, really, because as much as you want to react, the market is always going to put you in that mindset where it's going to try to mess with your emotions. And most people understand that the market, the best thing to do is usually the opposite of how you feel. So how do you expect to go into the market and just be that guy who can completely ignore all the stimuli, all the emotions? Let's take it outside the market, evaluate ourselves later, improve on that, and then your results will improve without the disadvantage of being hard on yourself and making it a chore. This is something that needs to be worked on, optimized, and it takes time. And as long as you're making little tweaks here and there, changing it every single day or improving every single day, eventually it's going to get to where you want, and it's going to possibly even surpass that. I would bet it would surpass it if you think in this way. So the last thing about it is just, if you haven't, go ahead and read Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is the best illustration of almost what I'm talking about on the, in a more practical, wider sense that applies to almost everything. The systems that we create, the steps that we take every day in terms of improvement get us where we want to get, versus just saying, I want this, because James Clear says as well, everybody wants the same thing. Just because you want something, just because it's your goal, doesn't make you special. It's what you do every moment on that journey. So I hope this helps, and I hope this helps you guys. So take care. Have a good trading week, guys.